Hi everyone, my name is Father Oleg Stirit and I'm the assistant priest here in Mount Gambier. In our lectionary, we are currently in Year C, and the focus in Year C is on the Gospel of Luke. Now, who was Luke? Well, Luke was a first century historian. He was a companion of Paul. He was a physician. And perhaps most importantly, he was a Gentile. Of the four Gospels, he was the only Gentile, and this will be important later on. Now, why did he write the Gospel? Well, let me read the beginning of his Gospel, and it will give us insight into why he wrote his Gospel. Luke begins, "Since many have undertaken to set down an orderly account of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, I too decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the truth concerning the things about which you have been instructed." So we hear what Paul's gospel is about is it's an orderly account. That's the first thing to take note of. Of the four gospels, his was the most literary, and it must be seen in connection with Acts. Luke and Acts form one narrative, one orderly account. Secondly, we heard he wrote it to see how Jesus fulfills the promises made to Israel. So it's a story of fulfillment. And what's unique to Luke, as I said before, is that he was a Gentile. So he wasn't an Israelite, he wasn't a Jew. So the peculiarity and one of the main themes of his gospel is that of universal salvation. Jesus Christ, yes, does fulfill the promises made to Israel, but he fulfills them by transforming them. And this is an important theme right throughout the gospel. So yes, the Israelites, as we hear in the Old Testament, is the firstborn son of God, but doesn't mean he's the only son, because Israel in the prophet Isaiah was called to be a light to the nations as well. And what Jesus brings about is the fulfillment of those promises in the Old Testament in such a way that he transforms them and brings about universal salvation to all. Now, how is this played out? Well, I'd just like to point to one way. In the Old Testament, one of the essential themes of the chosen people of the covenant of Israel was that they were holy, kadosh, they were separated from the Gentiles. Jesus fulfills this but transforms it, because holiness is now not separation from the Gentiles, but it's separation from sin. Holiness transforms into mercy. There's mercy now for all through Jesus Christ. And we hear it at the end of Luke's gospel on the cross, where he says to the repentant thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And he himself was not an Israelite. Mercy was given to him. So there's a transformation in the understanding of holiness, that it's now open for all, universal salvation. Now, one of the common terms we hear today is that of inclusivity. Is this what the gospel is about? Is it about inclusivity? Well, yes, but it's more than inclusivity, because mercy is not so much about structural inclusivity, but it's about relationships more so. Jesus has mercy on those who he comes into contact with. We have the example of the Good Samaritan, that question of who is my neighbor. Now, this is not a structural transformation. It's a relationship of mercy, and that's what Christ brings, is that universal salvation. And this is a theme that runs right through Luke and Acts. At the end of the Gospel of Luke, the story ends in Jerusalem. The story at the beginning of Acts begins in Jerusalem. And what do we hear in Acts 1:8? And this was the theme of the World Youth Day in Sydney in 2008. So after Jesus ascends into heaven, he sends the Holy Spirit. And what does he say in Acts 1 chapter 8? Acts chapter 1 verse 8, he says to the apostles, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." And that becomes the logic of the story that unfolds in Acts. The apostles begin in Jerusalem, moved to Judea, Samaria, and then to the ends of the world to bring about God's salvation for all. So I hope that is helpful for you as you read through the Gospel of Luke. Take note of that theme of universal salvation, that Jesus Christ does fulfill the promises made to Israel in the Old Covenant, but transforms them and opens them up to salvation for all. Thank you, and God bless.